Alright guys, so here's a quick video about direct objects and indirect objects and objective complements. So a direct object is a noun or pronoun after an action verb that explains who or what receives the action directly. So here's an example. Edgar chose the easiest task. The word chose is our verb and Edgar is our subject. And the thing that receives his choosing is the word task. So here's our direct object. In the second sentence, we have your grandmother misses you and your sister. Here's our subject, grandmother. Misses is our verb. And the people who receive your missing, or grandmother's missing, is you and your sister. These are the two direct objects. So in the exercise below, we're going to follow a similar procedure. What you have to do is you have to look at the sentence, you'll find the subject and the verb, and then you will try to find out what is receiving that verb. So I'll do the first 5 here with you. John le Carré writes suspenseful spy stories. Here's our subject, Jean le Carré. And writes is what he does, it's our verb. Now what receives his writing will be our direct object. What does he write? He writes spy stories. So here is our direct object right here. Number 2, you are eating a nutritious meal. You is our subject, our eating is the verb. And what receives the eating? What is the thing I am eating? I'm eating, or you are eating, a meal. This is a nutritious meal. Number 3, Elizabeth, there's our subject, sold. There's our verb, me, her computer. This one is trying to trick you. Elizabeth is our subject, and the action she's doing is selling. The thing that receives her selling will be her direct object. She's not selling me. She's not selling me to a computer. She's selling a computer to me. So the thing that is actually being sold is her computer. This is our direct object. Number 4, Ramon, subject, entertained, verb, Sam and me. The people who received Ramon's entertainment are Sam and me. These are our direct objects. No, and last one I'll do with you here. Number 5. Andres Segovia transcribed pages of classical music for the guitar. Here is our subject, Andres Segovia. Here's our verb, transcribed. And then pages is our direct object. One thing that is very true, and they try to trick you in all of these sentences almost, one thing that's very true is that a prepositional phrase will never be a direct object, indirect object, or an objective complement. They'll never be a part of sentence. So like if you go through these, you can find them. Like you have to just kind of ignore them, like about international intrigue, and for a very reasonable price, and with an account of his vacation, and of classical music for the guitar. You have to just completely mentally erase those prepositional phrases. All right, go ahead and do 6 through 10, and I'll read off the answers in a moment. Okay, so indirect object is a little bit different. An indirect object doesn't explain who receives an action. An indirect object explains who or what benefits from the action being done to the direct object. So here's an example down here, indirect object, mother, subject, gave, verb, me, the rest of the chores. The thing she actually gave is the direct object, and she gave the rest. This is our direct object. But who benefited from this? Me. I'm the one who benefits from the giving of the rest. So this is the indirect object. And the indirect object will always come in between the verb and the direct object, and not every sentence has an indirect object. In fact, very few sentences do. So let's do some practice ones down here at the bottom. So number 1, would you, here is our subject, lend verb, me, your umbrella. The thing that is actually lent is the umbrella, so this is our direct object, and then the person who benefits from it is me. This is our indirect object. Number 2. I, there's our subject, sent, there's our verb, Bill and Noreen a card. The thing I actually sent is a card, so that's our direct object. The people who benefit from the sending of the card are Bill and Noreen. This is our indirect object. Running out of room here to write it. Number 3, at Thanksgiving, ignore that, it's a prepositional phrase. I, subject, gave, verb, my aunt a basket, and then ignore of fruit and some flowers. That's a prepositional phrase. A basket is the thing I gave, so it's our direct object. The beneficiary of that is my aunt, so that's the indirect object. Number 4, please, lend, and the subject here is you. It's understood, but lend is our verb. Allison, your sheet music. The thing that you're supposed to lend is the sheet music. There's our direct object. Who benefits from lending the sheet music? It's Allison. She's indirectly involved. And one more, number 5. Did Mr. Terry is our subject, write, there's our verb, you, a dramatic role. The thing that Mr. Terry actually wrote, the direct object, is the dramatic role. And the person who benefits from it is you. There's our indirect object. Not all sentences have an indirect object, but when they do, the order will usually be subject, verb, io, do. But remember, not all sentences have indirect objects, so be careful. Okay, so the objective complement is a word that comes after a direct object, and it completes the meaning of the verb. And they can only exist with 2 types of verbs. They can only exist with verbs that mean consider or make. And here's a bunch of them: appoint, believe, call, find, keep, name, choose, elect, paint, render, sweep. There are a ton of them. And they're usually going to be the last word of the sentence, and they're a describing word. And they describe the direct object by explaining how the action was done to it. So here's the example up here. I, subject, consider, verb, Jane, direct object, and then the word friend here is the objective complement. It comes after the direct object, and it's used to describe the direct object by explaining how the verb was done to it. How do I consider Jane? And the answer is a friend. It tells us how I consider it. So let's do some of the example ones. I, there's our subject. Verb is find. His collection, which is our direct object. And then the word outstanding here, this is our objective complement. It describes the collection by explaining how I did the verb to it, how I find it. Number 2, would you, subject, call, verb, her actions, here's our direct object, heroic and foolish. Both heroic and foolish describe how the verb was done to the direct object. They explain how you might call her actions. Number 3, her dazzling performance, here's our subject, as Joan of Arc, rendered, verb, the audience, direct object, speechless. The word speechless is our objective complement. It comes after the direct object and explains how the verb, rendered, was done to the audience. How was the audience, or how was the audience rendered? And they were rendered speechless. Number 4, we must consider. We is our subject. Consider is our verb. The defendants is our direct object. And how must we consider the defendants? How is that action going to be done to the defendants? and the word here is innocent. It's a word after the direct object. It completes the meaning of the verb by explaining how it was done to the defendants. Number 5. The novelist, there's our subject, made, there's our verb. His villain, there is our direct object. Dynamic and enigmatic, there's our objective complement. It's a word that comes after the direct object, and it explains how the verb was done to it. How was the villain made? And the villain was made dynamic and energetic. All right, go ahead and try 6 through 10 on your own.